Have you ever ended a relationship, walked away from something, or decided that you were finally done with a situation only to find that it seems like your energy is still being pulled back to that person or to that thing? Well, that's where cord cutting can be extremely useful. In tonight's episode, we're going to be looking at what energetic cords are, how you'll know when it's time to cut one, and also we'll be going through several different methods of cord cutting. And at the end, I'm also going to show you a way that you can take it a step further and not just cut the energy out of your life, but also figure out a way to reclaim that energy that you've been feeding into something that isn't serving you any longer. So merry meet, I'm Aislin, this is Ask Aislin, and tonight I'm here with cord cutting and reclaiming your energy. So welcome to those who are joining us live. Say hi in the chat and let us know that you are here. As always, there's going to be a Q&A at the end of the episode, and I'll be watching the feed as we go. But leave your questions and your comments. I'll make sure that all the questions get answered by the end. And leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the episode, and that helps us get this out to more people. So we're going to dive in. There's a lot to talk about tonight. We're first going to start by talking about what is an energetic cord, and then we'll get into how you would know it was time to cut something or someone out of your life. Also, just to let you know, cord cutting, we'll be talking about all aspects of cord cutting tonight. So sometimes the cord cutting that you want to do is to physically cut a person out of your life. And sometimes it's about wanting to cut that person's energy out of your life or your need to fix everything for them. So there's many nuances here, different layers to how cord cutting works. The methods that I'm going to teach you in the middle of the episode will work whether you're trying to physically cut someone or something out of your life or whether you're trying to do it energetically as well. I'll also kind of give you some idea when it comes to the different methods, which ones seem to be work best for which intention you have. All right, so let's dive in and let's talk about first what is an energetic cord, right? So, what does it mean to be connected to something? So, kind of think about connections that you have in your life. Um, Sometimes we have left a relationship, we have left a job, we've left a situation, and yet we're still replaying conversations over and over in our mind. And you may find that this could be something that you left behind decades ago. It could be something you left behind recently, but it could be something that you've left behind decades ago. But yet you're still playing those conversations over and over in your head, which shows us that there's still a connection there, right? You may have quit a job, or you may have left a situation and you're still feeling very angry about it, or you're carrying lots of negative emotions around that situation. Maybe you decided not to pursue something, or maybe you said no to someone or something, and then yet you are still carrying and feeling guilty about the decision that you made. So these all can be situations where a cord cutting could be extremely helpful. Sometimes we don't think of all these different ways that a cord cutting could help us, right? It could also be, like I said, a person who is no longer in your life. It could be a person that you want to cut completely out of your life. It could be a person that you would like to cut some of their energy out of your life. For example, an ex-spouse or the father or mother of your child, and you have to still continue a relationship with that person, at least because of the kids, a relationship in some respect of the word. So maybe it's more about cutting out their energy from affecting you and not necessarily cutting them physically out of your life. So lots and lots of different ways that we can be using cord cutting. So whether you are trying to physically cut a person out or cut out their energy from your life, you can cut that out through the simple practice of cord cutting. And you may find that while it is extremely simple practice, it can have powerful ramifications for how you feel and how you continue to move through your life. So the other thing I wanted to mention here is I'm doing this episode as a part of our Sabbath series. So this is kind of part 2 of our Lughnasadh episodes. Part 1 talked about how to do prosperity magic. We did that a couple of weeks ago. You can go check out episode 192 if you want to learn about prosperity magic. So tonight, though, we're as part of this series, we're looking at other themes, for the Sabbath. And so, while prosperity magic is a big theme of Lughnasadh, there's also that imagery of the field, right? And the harvest and the cut. We say that Lughnasadh is the first cut of the wheat or the grain, for example, to our ancient ancestors who celebrated a holiday of this kind. The cut does not necessarily need to be cutting the wheat or the grain or the sustenance, right? It could be kind of cutting our own fields, figuring out what serves us and figuring out what no longer serves us, figuring out what served us for a time but doesn't serve us any longer. So at harvest time, at Lughnasadh time, if you think about the imagery of this Sabbath, cutting is a necessity, right? The crop is not cut because it was bad. It's not cut because it was a bad idea to plant it. It was cut because it is served its purpose. It's gotten to the place where it needs to grow, and now it is time to cull that, right? Cut that field and bring in the harvest. So just like something in your life, just because you feel that you need to cut it out of your life, it doesn't mean that it never served anything. It doesn't mean that it was bad or wrong, or wrong that it's finished. It just may simply be something that it's time to harvest, right? It's time to, do that cut. It could be a relationship that once mattered deeply to you, but there's energetic ties that pull you back to it. It could be a goal that you once had at a different time in your life that continues to give you guilt or make you feel grief. It could be a habit that once protected you. So I think what's important when we're doing cord cutting, I think this is really where like the shadow work around it can come in place, is to do some reflection before we cut. I mean, sometimes a person pushes us to the ultimate edge, right? And it's just like, I just need a cord cutting and I need to be done. But I do encourage you to kind of think about the role that some of these things played in your life. Otherwise, we can miss the opportunity to do some shadow work around them, and then we move on, and then we do the cord cutting. But I think before or after the cord cutting, it's always useful to do some of that shadow work. Now we'll be talking about that a little bit more in the episode later. But kind of getting back to that Lughnasadh imagery of the harvest and that sacred cut, I think Lughnasadh season, for that matter, asks us the question, what has reached the end of the growing season in your life? So sometimes that could be a good way to think about what it's time to do cord cutting around. What has reached the end of the growing season in your life? Or if you prefer a different way of kind of thinking of it, what am I still feeding that I am ready to stop feeding? So what am I still feeding my energy to that I'm ready to stop feeding my energy to? Now, of course, cord cutting can be done at any time of the wheel of the year. There are certain times in cycles that are more aligned to kind of releasing magic and releasing energy, which is what cord cutting is. So typically, the waning half of a lunar cycle is more connected to that. Some people like to do their cord cuttings like around the third quarter moon. Some people, which is the space between the full moon and the new moon on the way down, on the waning side down. Some people like to do the cord cuttings like right at the very final end of the cycle, like at the dark moon. I think that also we are in the waning half of the solar cycle, the larger cycle that's going on outside of the lunar cycles that are the smaller ones inside of it. And so here we are at Lughnasadh, which is in a lot of ways, is when we approach Lughnasadh to Mabon, that is like the third quarter if we were kind of trying to make connections between the solar cycle and the lunar cycle. So this is a great time for cord cutting. It's a great time for releasing. It's a great time for your prosperity magic and your money magic too. That's one aspect of the season. But this is a good time to figure out, what are you letting go of? What do you not want to take with you into as we go deeper into the darker half of the wheel? I think too, it's also a great time to do the cord cuttings now, even if you don't really fully understand the shadow work that surround them. Do the cord cuttings now, and then you will have some more space, I think, in your life in order to do the shadow work as we get deeper into the waning half of the solar cycle. So let us talk a little bit more about chords, and then we're going to get into the actual meat of the episode, which is the different methods we can use. Like I said, chords are energetic ties to people, to places, to situations. Like I mentioned, they're not inherently negative. You do have chords that are connecting you all the time to different people and different things and different situations. So the question is never going to be, do I have chords? Because the answer is yes, 100%. You absolutely have chords. We all do. The question is the chord connection that you have set up right now, or that is set up right now, is that consciously what you want to maintain? Do you want to maintain that kind of energy with that person, with that situation, with that thing, with that place? Or in the current form that it's in, or do you want to sever that connection in its current form, and maybe you want to change the connection that you have to that person, that place, that thing? So really asking yourself, are those connections, are my chords connecting me to things that I consciously am choosing to maintain in those forms? And if the answer is no, then that is going to be a place to begin thinking about doing your cord cutting. So remember, we're going to have cords to all kinds of things, current and former relationships of all kinds, not just romantic, all the platonic ones as well, the job ones, neighbors, essentially anybody you had an interaction with, you could theoretically have a cord connected to that person. Family, places that you've visited, that you've traveled, that you dream about, former homes that you've lived in, jobs, whether old jobs or current jobs, organizations and systems that you've been a part of, goals that you've had, habits that you have had or currently have, identities that you carry now or identities that you carried in the past, painful experiences, resentments, expectations that people have had of you, and different versions of yourself. All of these things are going to create chords. So we're going to talk at the end about a practice that I like to do, which is calling your energy back at night. And part of that is sort of calling all of the energy back, because you're going to have all these chords that you have created throughout the day with all the interactions that you've had and the things that you've seen and you've engaged in, and you can actually cut those energetically for the night, so you could go and you can sleep with your own energy. So we'll talk about that at the end. But think about and remember this: chords are not bad inherently. They only are going to have negative impacts on our lives if the energy that is feeding out of those chords is not the kind of energy that you want to consciously maintain, right, in the form that it's in. All right, so why don't we, I would like to look at the chat and say hi to those who are joining us. So Merry Meet to Joanne, Merry Meet Tommy and Debbie and Pamela, Merry Meet everybody. So Debbie was saying, so you are saying regrets too. Yes, so regrets and any type of negative energy can be a cord that a person could cut. So a regret over something that you said or did, or a role that you wished you had been in a past life, or sorry, a past life or a past of this present life. To me, it's the things that don't serve us. So like we ask ourselves, does regret serve the place that I am right now? And maybe the answer is yes. Maybe my regret does serve the place I am right now, because maybe it's fuels the shadow work that I need to do in order to kind of move past that life lesson. But if regret is just simply a negative energy that we carry, it's probably not serving us, and absolutely could be something that we could do a cord cutting around. Merry Meet to Jenny and Andrea, Merry Meet. Okay. Joanne said my mom called them silver strands, and there's many people who actually do visualize them as silver. And I feel like I have too. I've never really thought about it, but I have visualized them as kind of a metallic color like that. Everybody visualizes them different, but that makes a lot of sense that your mom would refer to them that way. I've heard many people say that. So if you're here with us live, say hi. It just helps us feed the algorithm while we're live and get this out to more people. So let's dive into, and feel free in the chat, share with us, have you done cord cuttings before? We're going to be going through different ways to do them. Share with us if any of those ways resonate, if they're new ideas to you that you'd like to try. And you can also, if you feel called to, let us know in the chat, what are you ready to release? What would you like to do a cord cutting around? So like I said, sometimes it's not necessarily a cut that connects us to a person. It could be the cut that we're cutting the need for their approval, for example. So we could still keep the person in our lives. Let's say it's a parent. Let's just as an example. So let's say we're always wishing for some kind of an approval from our parent, which is tied to some of our inner child work. So that's the shadow work, working through the inner child work of why do we need the approval. And but the cut is not necessarily cutting the mother or the father or your parent out of your life. It's just cutting my need to have their approval all the time, right? And that could be decades and decades. Just recently, I was walking and I started doing shadow work while I was walking, and I thought about, like, I have this need for my dad to like approve of what I'm doing with my life, like with my job, right, with my business, and thinking that I'm making enough money because that would look good in his eyes. And I realized that that all goes back to like some childhood things that I never really felt, no matter what I did, that it was enough. And I was always felt like there was like more. I was expected to give or do more. And so that would be a good thing to cut now. It's not cutting my dad out of my life in any way. It's just cutting that like connection to me needing his approval now decades later, right? And then I would want to do some inner child work around where did that need come from. So let's see. Joanne said she's done 2 cord cuttings in the past, so it'll be interesting to see what kind you have done, if they're like any of the ones we're going to talk about tonight. Debbie said, I think I have, by saying intentions during full moon when I release something. Sure, yeah. So those can be cord cuttings. Don't have to be this elaborate thing where we like actually do stuff. It can be energetic as well, and we're going to talk about that as one of the methods. Andrea said doing a cord cutting on the full moon is one of my favorite rituals to do. Yeah. So some people do them on the full moon. Some people do them third quarter moon. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I feel it's where a person feels they're aligned energetically, and that's the time to do it. Okay, so how do we know when something needs to be cut? So how do we know it's time for a cord cutting? So I think I would ask myself one or more of the following questions. And by the way, all 4 of these questions, these actually could be part of shadow work if you want to use these as journal prompts, pull cards around them, go take a walk and think about them. So here's the first question to ask yourself. Does the person, place, you can fill in the blank, whatever it is, situation, emotion, whatever it is, continue taking my energy and my attention even when I don't consciously choose it? So that goes back to what we said earlier in the episode. It's about like my conscious choice of how I maintain that connection, right? So the question for you is, does this person, does this place, does this situation, does this emotion, feeling, whatever it is, continue taking my attention, my energy, even when I don't consciously choose it? Okay, so if you answer yes to that, then it's good chance that this would be something that would be it would be benefited from a cord cutting. Okay, so here's another question. So you don't necessarily have to answer all these questions. Sometimes it's just a different way of looking at the same situation. So am I maintaining this because I want to? Or am I maintaining this because of, and then insert guilt, fear, obligation, habit, etc., any kind of negative emotion that you might have. So am I maintaining this thing because I want to? Or am I maintaining it because of guilt, fear, obligation, habit, or any negative thing you want to insert there? So if your answer is yes, I'm maintaining it because of like a fear, a guilt. Sometimes people have this like FOMO, fear of missing out, and so they'll stay stay connected to people or places or jobs or situations, even though like their gut and their intuition is telling them it's not serving them. They stay because they're afraid that they're going to miss out on some opportunity, or they're wrong. It could be their self-doubt, or they may have questions about their own self-worth, self-belief. These are all the things we're working on in our shadow work, and those things can keep us connected to the thing, even though we consciously don't choose to stay connected to something that hurts us or brings us down or makes us feel bad, right? Um, okay, so here's another question that you can think about. Has the actual situation ended while my energetic involvement continues? So this would be one for something that has been left behind. So a relationship, perhaps, a job, a role that we played, a habit that we had, a dream, any of these things. So has the actual situation ended? So physically it's ended, but my energetic involvement is continuing. And so if the answer is yes for that, and it feels negative. So if it feels like, oh yes, maybe we're part of an organization and it was a wonderful experience, and maybe it's just something where you graduate out of it, and it still fills you with fond memories. So that doesn't, maybe that situation's over physically, but you still have energetic connections to it, but it makes you feel good. There's no reason to be doing a cord cutting, right? So we want to do the cord cutting when it's making us feel bad, or there's negative connotations to it, or we're always pulled back to it and we're ruminating over it. That is the thing that we would want to sever in a cord cutting. What am I afraid would happen if I stopped feeding this connection? So that kind of gets to the fears that we may have underlying it and what may keep connecting us to it, right? So what am I afraid would happen if I stopped feeding this connection? I think that question is a deeper one for your own shadow work. So before you, do the cut, you absolutely could just do the cord cutting. But if you want to do some shadow work around it, kind of think about, where did it come from? What are the feelings that it brings up in me? What am I afraid would happen if I did cut it? Because that can often kind of lead back to why we kept and maintained that connection in the first place. So now the thing is too, is we don't always need to be cutting ourselves off from negative emotions either, because caring for a person, building up a business, or building up something that you're growing, maybe working through a difficult relationship, because relationships have ups and downs. All of those things take our energy, and sometimes they don't always feel great, right? So the question isn't simply, does this drain me? I think a better question to ask is, do I still choose to give my energy to this thing? So again, it's always coming back to you. It's your choice. No one can tell you, you must do a cord cutting on this. Sometimes you're not ready. Sometimes there needs to still be work done. But when you get to the place where it's like, you know what, I am no longer wanting to carry this energy, that's where the cord cutting can be incredibly powerful as you move through this thing. So we are going to talk now about some different ways to do cord cutting, and probably you've heard of some of these before. Maybe you haven't. So let's see here. I'm just going to go back to the chat real quick before I go into this part. So Debbie said, can you do a cord cutting if the person has passed on? Absolutely. You could do a cord cutting at any time. It doesn't matter if it doesn't even matter if they're in this life. It could be a person you knew from another life. You can still do a cord cutting, and you can do a cord cutting if someone has passed on. Let's see. Pamela said, I did an effective cord cutting. She said, I received from an ingenious shaman. She might have met ingenious shaman. It was a bit involved. I will take a picture of the instructions and post later. Involved a cord and knots and burning. Yeah, actually, post it in the group. I'm sure, because this week we're kind of talking about this, so people would love to see that. There is one, we're going to talk through these different methods, and you actually can combine them too. One of the ones we're going to talk about is knots, where you tie them and then untie them. Sometimes people think you have to just cut with scissors or a cord, but there are totally different ways that we can do it. Pamela said, I also do energetic cord cuttings, gazing at my eyes in the mirror and speaking what chords I'm breaking. That's a great way to do it too. Sometimes people think it has to be involved in all these elaborate things we have to do, and it can just simply be as simple as speaking the intention and speaking it with, your energy behind it. Tommy said, I have a cord that is long overdue for cutting. Well, it's a good time of year to do it. And so whenever you feel ready, hopefully maybe some of what's in the episode will inspire you. And if it's not time yet, then you will do it when you're ready. But sometimes, when they're long overdue, it's just time to just kind of pick a time in the lunar cycle and be like, that's the day I'm going to do it. And Mary Meet Elizabeth, welcome. Okay, so let's go in and let's talk about the different methods. So the first method is using a physical cord, scissors, or a blade or something like that. So I had hoped to grab like a piece of yarn to show you, so I'll just have to explain this one. But it's very simple. It's probably one of the cleanest classic ways to do a cord cutting. So what you want to do is you're going to take a piece of thread, a piece of string, a piece of yarn, a shoelace, anything that you have available. So like you don't necessarily have to go out and buy yarn. If you don't have yarn, you literally can just grab a shoelace if you want. That thing is going to represent your connection. So basically it's the physical thing that is symbolically representing the cord, the energetic cord that you have to this person, this place, or this situation. So what you can do, it's sort of up to you. So there's ways to elaborate on this. So honestly, all you have to do is just take the cord and cut it and kind of speak. I always like to speak my intention because I think it's good for you to activate your third chakra, which is like a chakra of manifestation. So when you speak something out loud, it just adds extra energy to it. So I would say speak the intention I cut my connection to, and it can be as simple as just the person's name, or I cut my need to feel like I need validation from this person and name their name, and then you cut this cord, right? But you can elaborate on this. You can have two pieces of paper where one has your name and the other one has the name of the person or the thing that you're releasing, and you can connect those with the cords. You could also have two objects that are basically sitting side by side, one that represents you and one represents the other person or the situation or the thing. You can have photographs, if that makes sense. That could make sense in when we're actually physically cutting a person out of our lives, or you can just simply hold the two ends of the cord. Another way that I also have done it in the past, which I kind of like, is I get a longer piece of yarn and I wrap it around my waist and tie it. And then I have like a long end coming off of me. And then I sever that. And then you could burn the cord, you could bury it, or you could just literally throw it out. But remember, the key here is that one end of the cord, one end of this string or yarn or whatever you're using is representing you, and then the other end is representing whatever you are releasing. Before you cut, I would name what the cord represents. And I think too that you don't need anything fancy. You don't have to rush out and get some beautiful knife to do this. You can use a kitchen knife. You can use scissors. Just be careful. Don't cut yourself. You don't want to do that on top of it. Ordinary scissors will work. I did want to mention when it comes to the athame, which is the witch's knife, many witches don't cut things with the athame. They cut energetic things. So the athame can be good when we're doing like an energetic cord cutting, when we're not actually cutting the yarn or string or that's representing it. Sometimes witches will have a separate knife that they would use specifically for cord cuttings. Again, you do not have to run out and buy something. You can just, if you decide you don't want to use your athame, you can just use a kitchen knife. It's totally fine, or scissors. There's nothing wrong with having a special pair of pretty scissors or a special knife that you use just for cord cuttings either. I think that when it comes to this type of cord cutting, it's very simple. And like all of the practices I'm going to tell you tonight, you can make a much more elaborate ritual. You can cast a circle, you can call quarters, you can bring deities in if you work with deities, but you do not have to. You can simply sit and you can ground your energy. You can drop grounding cords into the earth, do a little breathing, breathe some energy up from the earth and fill yourself. And as you exhale, just release energy down into the earth or release like nerves or anything that's not serving you. Get yourself grounded and centered for a few minutes, and then you can do the practice. So it's really up to you whether you want to turn it into a larger ritual or not. So I think, like I said, this is a very simple one to do. It does require you to have that yarn or piece of ribbon. It requires you to have that symbolic thing. Whether or not you choose to have the two things to represent you and the other person, thing, or situation, that is up to you. But at the very least, you would need the cord if you're doing this method. And you can always try what I said, tie it around your waist, have it kind of hanging off of you, and then do the cut. Say out loud, I'm releasing my energy to this, or I'm cutting my energy and my connection to this thing, and then cut. Now, if it is a physical connection, like if you want to literally never see that person again or hear from that person again, have that be part of the intention. If instead it's someone that you still will need to see in your life, you just want to cut certain aspects of their energy away from you, then you would speak that as your intention. So it's when it comes to this, it's the intention that is going to be the most important thing. Okay, if anybody has any questions about any of the methods, let me know. I'm just going to keep kind of moving in the interest of time. And let's Joanne said she has used the two candle method, and that is the one that we're about to talk about now. Okay, so two candle method I think is probably the next most common one, if not the most common one. I've done, the physical cord cutting, and then I've done the candle one as well. Okay, so many people will probably have seen memes going around that explain how to do the candle and the candle cord cutting. For those who haven't seen it or just want to talk about it, we're going to go into some detail. So in order to do this, you'll need two candles. You can use any kind of candles that you want, with the exception of candles that are like the prayer candles, like back there. If they're in a big jar, they won't work. This method won't work because the candle flame is what will light the cord on fire and will sever it. And it's not a knife this time, it's the fire that is severing it. So sometimes people will feel drawn to this kind of cord cutting. I think this kind of cord cutting is very good for physically removing a person from your life. And though you could use this cord cutting for anything. So what you would do is you would take two candles. I like the little chime candles because they're smaller, right? And so they will take less time to burn. They typically will burn down in about 1 hour. If you put some oil on them, that will act as a catalyst. It will make them burn faster. So you are going to be using some caution. You can get, I got like a big box of these candles. So there's many different colors. If I was doing a cord cutting, I would probably use black. But I have no black candles in this container because I have already used them all. So if I didn't have black, then I would probably use white, or maybe I would use other colors that I just felt were connected. If you want something bigger, you could use like a taper like this. You could use a pillar. The only thing you can't use is a candle that's already poured into a jar. So what you will do is you will take these two candles, and then you're going to take a ribbon. I would recommend like a string, something that's going to easily burn. Sometimes like coated ribbon, especially if it's really thick. The idea here isn't to have like a lot of crazy chaos and fire. It's just to sever the cord. So I would pick like a string that will burn easily. And then what you're going to do is you're going to basically connect these two candles by tying one end of the string to one of them and the other end of the string to the other. And you'll have the cord in between, and you'll put them in candle holders. Make sure everything is very secure, and that's why I like using the small candles, because then you can kind of sit with it and you can watch this for safety as it burns out. The bigger candles require longer time, and then it makes you have to put it in a very safe place. Like I would put it like in a shower stall or something like that where no one can get in and disturb it, or just keep an eye on it, because sometimes these can create some fire as the string between them burns. So what is going to happen is, just like in the last spell, or last method, I would make sure I name it, right? So, this candle represents me, and this candle represents, and then fill in the blank. And I'm severing my connection. And then, you speak, whether it's a physical connection you're severing or an energetic one, you speak that intention out loud, and then you'll light the candles. Now, sometimes, to me, I would recommend light the candles and then kind of like, I like when it comes to magic, you do the magic and you let it go. Sometimes people become very fixated on the candles and this type of spell. And I've actually seen it in our own group when people will post pictures of it and they want everyone to weigh in on what this means. So sometimes people will look at, which of the candles burned down faster. Did some wax of the wax of one cross over the line into the wax of the other? Which flame went out first? Which side of the candle actually lit the cord? And then they're going to assign meaning to every single thing that they see when the candles are burning. So I think, it's absolutely, there's nothing that says that you can't do divination while you're also doing a cord cutting. You absolutely can. But you really want to think to yourself about what is going on here. Because if you start to fixate it on it and then you're posting it in groups and you're asking all these people what they think about it, you have to ask yourself, did you actually do the cord cutting? Because if you're fixated on all the energy afterwards, you're still connected. So that's why I think it can be better to not become obsessed with what the candles do. Just do the cord cutting, right? And then put it behind you and have it over. Say it's over. If you find that the energy still is coming back to you, repeat it at a later time. Wait till the same time at the next lunar cycle and do it again. Sometimes you need to do it more than once, and that's totally fine. But I think it's the obsession and the fixating on things that is like, if you think about the purpose here is to cut the energy, you're not really cutting your energy if you're fixated on it, right? One word I did want to mention about this type of cord cutting is I have seen people talk about how this is actually a binding ritual. I have done some research on this, trying to figure out where the idea comes from. There are hoodoo rituals where you can bind, like in a love spell, by doing something, but it's a totally different kind of spell with a different intention. I don't think that's where this idea has come from, but a couple of years ago, I started seeing this going around on Witch Talk, and there would be people who I kind of presume to be newer to the path, not really knowing a lot about magic, and then sort of spreading this claim that, oh, when you do a cord cutting with candles, you're actually binding yourself to that person. I've been a witch for over 30 years. I've practiced with a lot of people older than me who've been practicing much longer than that. This is just the way that we've done cord cuttings for decades and decades and decades. It's a traditional witchcraft practice. I don't put much stock in the people who say, you know, you can't do this kind of cord cutting. So I think if you feel drawn to this type of cord cutting, do this cord cutting. Don't worry about it. I don't know what those people are talking about. But if you think it's got the wrong energy, it's always important what you think. Your intention when it comes to your own magic is the most important thing. Okay, like I mentioned, fire safety though, just be careful if you're going to choose that method. Okay, so next up is, and share in the chat if you've done any of these methods, or if you have any experience doing them and what the results were. So the next one is visualization and energetic cutting. So I think it was Pamela or somebody earlier had said they gaze into the mirror and then they'll speak it out loud, and then that's how they do it. So we can absolutely do visualization and energetic cutting that way. We don't need the candles and the cords. We don't need the symbolic props. We can have them if we like, but we don't need them if we don't want them. You don't need any supplies at all for this. You just need to be able to get into a meditative state. So when you do that, you want to, I would say before any one of these practices that I'm talking about tonight, I would do the grounding work. I would drop my roots. I would get grounded. I would do some breathing for a few minutes, make sure I'm grounded and centered and my intention's clear. And then once you're there, then you do the work. So in this case, you would then begin to visualize the connection. So some people will visualize it like a silver cord. It's a very common thing for people to visualize. Other people will visualize different colors. So maybe they're, especially if they're like a clairvoyant, they might see like lots of colors. They may see colors that are connected to the emotions that are connecting to this person. So the idea here is there's no right or wrong way to do it. You're just going to visualize what the connection looks like. You can also visualize it. You can even, like, if you're clairsentient, you can even feel it. What does it feel like? Sometimes people will feel like it's a heaviness in the chest or it's like a punch in the stomach. And so you'll visualize that. And then from there, you're basically doing all of this as a visualization. You may choose to kind of see, like I like to see a silver athame or a selenite athame slicing the cord. Maybe you see your own cord kind of reeling back into you and severed from the other person's cord. Some people may see scissors, they may see a knife, maybe they see fire burning it, right? They see a sickle or a scythe to kind of bring in the Lughnasadh imagery of harvest. Even your hand just wiping through it, it's energy, right? So your hand cutting through it, karate chopping it, something like that. And then you will see that connection dissolved or cut away. Sometimes what people will do too is because you're doing this all kind of visually and energetically, they will then see, like, maybe the cord has left a wound in their energetic body, and then they'll see themselves healing that, stitching it up, or putting a band-aid over a salve under a balm or something like that to heal it. And that can be a particularly powerful part of the energetic cord cutting, especially if there's a lot of pain that is connected to severing this cord or pain connected to this relationship. I think this is a really powerful way to do it. Like I said, you don't need all the stuff. You just need this. I remember years and years ago when Beth and I were living together, and she had a boyfriend who was very toxic and toxic to like both of our living situations. So we actually did an energetic cord cutting exactly like this. And then we followed it up with a physical restraining order. So sometimes you do need to do some mundane follow up if it's particularly toxic. But this is the way we did the cord cutting, and it worked. It definitely worked. He was it's kind of lingered around for a bit, and then he was out of our lives. So so anyway, so that is a great method to use, especially if you're somebody who likes the visualization and likes to do kind of the energy work along with it. Okay, so then a fourth method I wanted to mention before we kind of move on and talk about like how would you reclaim your energy afterwards is knotting and then untying. So instead of cutting, we call it cord cutting, but knot magic is also very tied to Lughnasadh season. And so we like to do knot magic when we want to draw things in. So we can do prosperity knot magic where we knot the cord and we say thanks and give gratitude for things in our lives, or we can knot the cord with an intention of what we're trying to draw in. But you can also knot the cord with all of the negative things that are connecting you to this person, this situation, or this place. So for example, let's say you carry a bunch of guilt. So you could knot a cord or tie a knot in the cord that represents your guilt. And maybe there's also a feeling of being obligated. And so you knot in your obligation, and then you knot in your resentment. Maybe there's the need for approval. So you kind of go through all of the different things, the feelings that are kind of coming up and connecting you to this person or this situation. You knot all those things into the cord. And then you go and you untie them. And so as you untie it, you would say it out loud, I unknot my need for approval. And then you go to the next one, I unknot my need or the resentment that I carry. And then you go to the next one, I unknot my obligation to stay here. trapped in this place. And so you make this uniquely yours, but what I would do if we're going to do this method is just take some time in contemplation. Again, start with the breathing and the grounding. Spend some time contemplating, like, what are the negative emotions and feelings that come up when I think of this situation, and then have those be your knots. And there's no right or wrong to how many you can have. It could just be one, that's totally fine. But you may find that there's 4 or 5 or 6 or even more that you knot in there, and then you untie them all and you say, my obligation is gone. My resentment is gone. If it's physically removing a person, this person is gone. And you untie it. And then from there, what I would do with the cord is I'd probably just throw it out. I'd probably put it in a garbage can that gets taken off my property. It's up to you. You could bury it. I would use my intuition here, but if it were me, I would get rid of that cord right away. I think that could be a really useful practice too. It's probably different. Like, people think of cord cutting, they're thinking of actual cutting. But it's a different way of looking at it. So share in the chat if you have used any of these methods, if any of them work, if there's ones that you think you'd like to try. Mary Meet Glitter. Glitter says that she loves using knot magic. I do too, yeah. Jenny said, I do mostly visualized cord cutting. She said it works well and can easily be made a daily practice if needed. Exactly. And then we're going to talk about that at the end. A little practice that I like to do at the very end of the day, where I just kind of cut off all the cords that are connected to me. But it's so simple that you could do that anywhere. If you want to do the candle one, we got to kind of do some prep work. We got to set it all up. You can't do that on the subway while you're riding on the bus or something, right? Or driving in your car. But you could be doing energetic knot or cord cutting anywhere you go. And Glitter says hers has worked almost every time. Yeah, it's very, very, very powerful magic. Joanne said, I use brown twine from the craft section in Walmart. That's great. Brown twine is good. It's going to burn easy too if you are doing it with the candles. Okay, so what happens if the energy comes back? Why do some cords come back? So some cords take a few times through. So sometimes people will say, I did my cord cutting and it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And then sometimes they'll start to get fixated, and that's often when I see them start posting pictures with the candles and what's going on here. And, it's okay if the ritual doesn't work the way that you expected it to. Sometimes there's more work for you to do around it. Maybe it's time to do some more shadow work. If you feel like you did the magic, you did the ritual, and then you find yourself kind of like coming back to it. So sometimes you will find that the cord will get rebuilt. Sometimes it is, if it's a very long term thing that you carried for decades and decades and decades, and you haven't done much work around it, it may be more than can be expected to be released by just a simple cord cutting. That, and in that way, may be why it feels like it's coming back. So you may do a ritual. Let's say you carried somebody else's problems for a long time. So you do a cord cutting one night, and you do your method of cord cutting around releasing your responsibility for this person's problems, right? And then the very next morning, you notice you're back to rescuing them, or a few days later, or even a week later, you feel like you're back to it. Maybe you cut your attachment to your ex, right? Just out of your life completely, and you feel great about the cord cutting you did, and then a few days later you find yourself checking their social media 6 times that day, or your old job, you do a cut against the job that you were in that you didn't like, and then you find yourself like continuing an argument in your head with your former boss later that week. So it's okay. I think the biggest thing I can say for you here is don't despair over that. Don't get so wrapped up in it. Don't panic and say my magic didn't work. Sometimes it's just a little deeper, and maybe you need to do it again. There's nothing that says you can't do magic more than once. The other thing I think to keep in mind is that sometimes it doesn't work on our timeline. Sometimes magic, like you put the intention out there, sometimes you need to give it the space to let it be. It could be that the things that are popping up for you are popping up because your attention still needs to be there to continue to do some of the shadow work. So maybe ask yourself, why is it so hard to let go of this? And, when I've done this cord cutting and then this person's popping back in my life, why? What is left energetically for me to work through? It could just be a sign from the universe that there's some remaining shadow work to do. Now, I wanted to kind of end with talking about what does it mean to reclaim our energy. So Debbie asked a question and I think this part it works really well. This question works really well with the episode. So she had said, when you're getting rid of something like a feeling, let's say you want to cut a feeling out or release a negative feeling. How do you know what to replace it with, or more specifically, how do you replace it? So I think the key idea here is, you know, it's you could think of it as replacing it with something else. You could think about, if let's say I'm releasing my resentment I have over a job situation, right? So I don't necessarily need to replace it with anything. I think that what it does, like I could think of it as I'm reclaiming my energy. That's kind of how I like to think of it. But sometimes people do want to replace it with something. So think about, how do you want to feel? So instead of feeling resentful for the job, how would you like to feel instead? Would you like to feel like, my time, there were good times while it lasted? Would you like to focus on what you learned about yourself? Would you like to focus on sometimes like very negative things can have an impact on a lesson, right? Would you like to focus on the fact that it allows you to do some shadow work? So that can be the thing that it's not necessarily replacing one emotion with another emotion. Or one feeling with another feeling. It's like I can look at it kind of two ways, and I can do both of them. I'm going to reclaim my energy, because the energy that I've been feeding to that thing, that's what I'm severing. So I'm reclaiming my energy, and I can use it for anything I want, right? But the other way I can think about it is that I am replacing it with the way that I want to feel, not by the way I felt obligated to feel. So that's another way to kind of think about it. So I hope that helps you kind of think about, like, every time that you have a limited amount of energy. In many traditions, Chinese traditional medicine comes to mind, where there's this idea that all of our energy comes from the earth. And so that's why grounding is so important. And so we have this, but we have this finite amount of energy. And your energy can be spent in all of these different places. So I think that when we're thinking about reclaiming our energy, think about all the places that you spend your energy and ask yourself if you're happy with that. Your problems are your problems, and other people's problems are theirs. When we have children and we have people that like we are caretaking for, of course we're there to be givers to them, but we are not meant to live another person's life. We're not meant to take on all of their problems. We're not meant to carry things for other people. Other people's work is their work, and our work is our work. And I think that's where cord cutting can be very useful, is to try to decide, where am I carrying somebody else's work, right? And I'm going to reclaim my energy so I have time for and space for my own work. I think that's another important way that you can think about it. I did want to share one final thing before we close here, and that is the calling your energy back at the end of the day. I find this to be a very useful practice. We've alluded to it throughout the episode. So you can do this every single night before you go to bed. Take a few deep breaths as you're sitting on the side of your bed, or maybe you have a little bedtime practice that you do. And just imagine imagine your body, and imagine like cords attaching you to the different interactions you've had that day. things with your boss, with your partner, with your kids, with your animals, with like anything that's like concerned you, any place where your energy has been pulled into these different places. They're not all negative, some of them are positive. But when you go to bed, you want to go to bed with your energy, not carrying other people's energy. So I like to imagine seeing myself with I like a selenite athame, and I like to see myself kind of going around my body and just severing all those cords, sending other people's energy back. So like you can say, I call back my own energy, the energy that belongs to me, and I send back the energy that belongs to someone else. And if you're somebody who has a lot of trouble sleeping, I highly recommend trying this energetic practice. Just see if it works for you, because sometimes this is a way to kind of let go of some of the anxiety and the worry and the things that keep us up at night. You can pick all of that energy back up the next day. You can build it all back up, all the connections you have to people. We're not severing our connections to those people. We're just sending their energy back and then reclaiming our own at the end of the night, so you can sleep in your own bed with your own energy. So try that, and if you've ever tried it before, let us know in the chat how it worked for you. I found it can be very simple, but very, 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 very effective. All right, so I am going to move into the Q&A. So I'm going to go back to the chat. If anybody has any other questions to ask, it doesn't have to be related to cord cutting. It can be about anything at all. Put it in the chat. I'm just going to tell you about a few things that are coming up, and that'll give us time for questions. If you are watching back in replay, feel free to put your questions in the chat as well. I go through, I answer anything later that I wasn't able to answer during the live. So what's coming up? So next week on 8/24, I believe I'm going to do an episode on the triple goddess, and then I do have plans to follow that up with an episode on the dark god versus the light god, and the like two different faces of the divine masculine as well. So that is what is coming up on 8/31. I'm actually going to be not here in my home studio. I'm going to be in Boston. I think like last time we are going to be doing a live episode from there. There's some talk that we might do a live episode on location from Stonehenge in New Hampshire, but I don't know if that's going to work or not. So, but am hoping to still bring an episode on 8/31. I just don't know the subject yet for that. I do want to mention, if you feel called to do some deeper work around your shadow work, if you watch these episodes and it stirs something in you and you want to do the deeper work, we would love for you to join us in our Shadow Seekers membership. That's where we do a lot of energetic work and shadow work, and kind of help people reclaim their energy, tap into their intuition, strengthen their self-belief, release the things that they're carrying that don't serve them, do some shadow work around it. So if you feel called to that kind of deeper work, we would love for you to join us. We are going to have kind of an unveiling of our new websites very soon. It should be within the next month, but if you feel called to join us before then, just leave a comment in the chat or send me a message. You can reach me at Aislin Lumina at bodymindwitchcraft.com. Let me know, and we'll make sure to get you the information you need to enroll if you would like to do so sooner than later. Our course, Demystifying Witchcraft, which is my signature course on the foundations of witchcraft, that will also be being released very soon as we unveil the new website as well. So if you want to learn about, casting quarters, casting the circle, calling the quarters, working with deities, doing spells, timing and magic, all those different foundational tools of magic, that course might be a good fit for you as well. If you would like to get your hands on that course sooner than later, also you can reach out for me. We're not going to bar anybody from joining now, but we are just kind of putting the final touches on our websites before we release everything. So let me just check the chat and see if there's any other questions here. So Debbie said, can you do this nightly if you want to release the bad energy of your day? Absolutely. So you can absolutely do that practice I was talking about. In fact, I would recommend doing it every single night. And you can see the cords attaching you to the negative energy and just severing those ties, and then see if that helps you sleep a little better. Uh, Glitter says that I mean, you could do this on the sly under a desk or such. Yeah, exactly. So like with the knotting stuff, yeah, that's what's so great about it. Maybe you can't do the candles under your desk, but you absolutely could do the knots. Or you could do even like just cutting a cord underneath the desk without people seeing you. Um, okay. So Pamela said, so we get drained literally. Yeah, I mean, there's always a ton of cords connected to us, but I think that's why it's so important to reclaim your energy at the end of the night. Oh, Elizabeth said you just said everything that I'm going through right now with the caretaking. Yeah, yeah. So I think you're a prime candidate for somebody to try out some of the cord cutting methods around it. You can, like I said, you can do the one at the end of the day. You can do it every single day, and then if you want to do a larger one, again, it's not about cutting the person out necessarily. It's just the connections, the obligations, all of it, like the parts that are draining you of your energy and your livelihood. Um, Okay, so I'm going to end for the night, but make sure to leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the feed, and that will help us get this out to more people. If you're not already on our mailing list, I'm going to drop a link into the chat here. If you're watching back later on YouTube, then you will find this link in the description of the video. You can sign up for our mailing list, and you'll also be sent a copy of the Witch's Guide to Shadow Work, and that way you'll receive our weekly newsletter, which has a link for the replay to this episode, as well as other tips on witchcraft, shadow work, and energy work. Make sure to subscribe to our Body Mind Witchcraft YouTube channel. It will help us get closer to our monetization goals. And I hope you have a great rest of your night. And happy Tuesday. Until next time, blessed be.